Another question that you may have is why do this so early? It's barely 5 a.m., right? There's a few reasons. One is an experiment I'm running, and the second is so Ryan O'Sullivan cannot now turn on his leaf blower or his grass cutting machine because it's too early. And I'm just making a joke here because of something really funny that happened yesterday. I invite you to check it out in the channel. In fact, I think I'll play for you a little video because it's so funny. It's so funny to watch. So maybe it's a good way to start the day. So what happened yesterday? Yeah, I've known this for a while because when I lived in Lake Point Estates, which is a small community controlled by this criminal network and Diosdado Cabello and Phil Denny and those people. So it's a spy planned community, basically. And I lived there for a year almost. And during that time, I saw this trick countless times. So I know, what it is, which made me reflect on the fact that before I left this house a year ago, I really had no chance because I didn't have the database and I hadn't seen all these tricks from up close. But coming back to this neighborhood a few weeks ago, now armed with the database and armed with the knowledge of having gone through, let's call it spy school, intensive spy school for a year, these people have no chance. The neighbors here at Valleyside Drive. Anyhow, so this is what this character was doing yesterday. So the thing, what they do is that they have the house behind his house. So his house is 26706 Valleyside Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494. And his name, supposedly, is Ryan O'Sullivan. I think it's a fake name. And I think they picked O'Sullivan after Annie Sullivan from Google, who was a person that I had good interactions with at Google. But anyhow, so the reason I'm going to show you what he's doing, but the reason why he's doing this is to send an auditory cue to the house on his backyard, which is the house that has the Xfinity tap aggregator that my house is connected to. And what he's doing is signaling to that house that I'm connected to the internet. So they start running the interception. They have some sort of hardware interception there. They take the packets coming from this TCP/IP packets coming from my house, and then they retransmit them using their military-grade antennas. But what they're doing is doing this on demand only, not 24/7. I guess they're scared that the FBI could backtrace what they're doing, could intercept their communications if they have this thing running all the time. So to minimize the probability of that happening, what they're doing is they only do it when I connect to the internet. And so he has to signal that house that he's connected. And that this is what they do. So he was fake cutting the grass, basically. And this is in the channel, on the KOL-Mobile channel, on the shorts section. So you'll see, he walks the machine and he's making a lot of, like that machine makes a lot of noise. You cannot hear because it's mute, but, and I'm also like, this is shot from maybe like 120 feet away. So this is at zoom level 20 in my phone. Yeah, it looks close, but it's really very far. But it's still so far away, I can hear the noise here. Anyhow, you'll see that he's walking the machine only through the concrete and through the pavement and on the road, pretending that he's cutting the grass. The reason is that he needs to make a lot of noise. And if he was really cutting the grass, then the grass would be short. And then if he has to do it again tomorrow, I would notice that he's cutting a grass that is already short. So the solution they found to that is that they do this trick where they pretend to be cutting the grass, but they're not really cutting anything. They're letting the grass grow. And eventually they will really cut it, but it was short, so he couldn't cut it this time, and then he did this. And this went on for 30 minutes. Well, it's a very small area. I think that's probably something like 15 feet to 15 feet of grass. Like you can cut that in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. but he spent like half an hour on that. Just, and it's comical to watch. And also, to say the obvious, the reason why he doesn't fear ridicule is because he knows that the people in front of him are also spies. So they know what he's doing. Otherwise, they would think that he's crazy. Just walking the machine on the pavement like that for half an hour. But anyhow, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this early today, so he cannot pull that trick again today and cannot notify the house. And I'm curious to see if they are intercepting the traffic today as well. So anyhow, his name is Ryan O'Sullivan at 26706 Valleyside Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And just to close on this, which might be a good data point, now that we know that they're bouncing the signals of the satellites, it is trivial to backtrack where they're sending the data to, because this has a timestamp when they were using that machine. So it means that the transmission should be very close by. And we know that the house that has the tap is the one on the back. So now we have the timestamp and the point of origin of the transmission. And with that, we could backtrace which were the satellites, say in that hour, that could have passed through viable points, so that when the signal comes down, it ends up at a house that is also marked in the index. It's a small set of possibilities. It's not that big. It could be maybe 100 possible targets. That could tell us where they're sending the data to. It's a solvable problem with a bit of computer science. Okay, so that's the reason why. And speaking of taps, so the Xfinity aggregators, I also want to mention that it was picked up by the pipeline that all the aggregators, all the Xfinity aggregators that are placed on the streets in Katy, in public streets. So there's two types of aggregators. Like usually they're placed on the backyard of a house, so in private property. Like in this case, where they have the aggregator that serves my house in one of their houses. And that's how they steal my data when I'm connected to this internet. But there's other aggregators in Katy that happen to be on the street, like on the sidewalk. It was picked up by the pipeline that most of the aggregators in Katy that are on the sidewalk, on public roads, are under heavy surveillance, meaning right next to the aggregator, there is a car or multiple cars parked Moscow style, watching the radio frequency spectrum and visually surveilling the aggregator. And it seems to be the case that the more cars that are parked next to the aggregator correlate with the importance or the risk of the agent that lives near that aggregator. Because there is a physical distance at which you can leave from the aggregator. Like that there is a technical limitation. Like the aggregator is there because your house has to be less than, I don't know what it is really, but say 100 feet away. There's a distance, because after that, the signal degrades and the internet service quality degrades too much. So I guess this is important, because if authorities see these aggregators with 3 or 4 cars parked next to it, it means that less than 100 feet away, there is a super prominent agent or somebody that carries a lot of risk for Diosdado Cabello, specifically. So it's a good way to pick targets. That's why when I went to see that neighborhood the other day, that there was a police officer car parked in a driveway surrounded by safe houses and agents' houses. They had, so that police officer has the aggregator outside of his home in the sidewalk, and there was a car parked Moscow style next to that aggregator, precisely watching that nobody plugs into the aggregator, which is silly, really, if you think about it, because I imagine that the NSA is not going to send people to plug into the aggregators. It's just silly to think what's going to happen. I imagine the NSA has a way of intercepting things at a higher level of aggregation, like at the T11 connection or in Louisiana at the regional interconnect. I imagine like this. I don't think that the criminals have to do that because they're spies and they don't have legal control of the country. But I imagine the real authorities don't have to come to Katy with the cable and plug into the aggregator. It's silly to think that way. But anyhow, I think that also shows how ignorant they are.